My name's Tasha, and let me tell you about how my world used to be before everything flipped upside down. Back when life was just Dad, Mom, and me, we lived in a big old house with more rooms than I bothered to count. It was peaceful, the kind of place where laughter filled the halls, and there was always some sweet smell wafting from the kitchen. Mom had a thing for baking, and Dad couldn't resist sneaking a taste whenever he got the chance. Those were the days when everything seemed perfect, like we were living in our own little bubble of happiness. I remember spending countless hours exploring every nook and cranny of that house. The creaky floorboards, the hidden alcoves, and the dusty attic filled with forgotten treasures, it was all my playground. Dad would often join me on these adventures, spinning wild tales about the house's history and the imaginary ghosts that supposedly haunted its halls. Mom would roll her eyes at his stories, but I could always see the hint of a smile on her face. Weekends were special back then. We'd pile into Dad's old station wagon and head out for picnics in the nearby state park. The trunk would be packed with Mom's famous sandwiches, homemade lemonade, and enough snacks to feed an army. We'd spend the whole day there, swimming in the lake, hiking through the woods, and watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. Those moments, with the three of us huddled together on a worn picnic blanket, felt like they could last forever. School was just a stone's throw away from our house, and I'd walk there every morning with a spring in my step. I had a tight-knit group of friends, and we'd spend our lunch breaks giggling over silly jokes and sharing our dreams for the future. My teachers were kind and encouraging, always pushing me to do my best. I was a good student, not the top of the class, but I enjoyed learning and took pride in my accomplishments. As I grew older, I started to notice the little things that made our family unique. Dad had this uncanny ability to fix anything that broke in the house. He'd spend hours tinkering in the garage, emerging with grease-stained hands and a triumphant grin. Mom, on the other hand, had a green thumb that could make even the most stubborn plants thrive. Our backyard was a riot of colors, with flowers blooming year-round and a vegetable garden that kept our kitchen stocked with fresh produce. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses. Like any family, we had our share of disagreements and tough times. I remember the year Dad lost his job at the factory. The tension in the house was palpable, and for the first time, I saw worry lines etched on my parents' faces. But they never let it show in front of me. They put on brave faces, tightened our belts, and worked through it together. Dad took on odd jobs around the neighborhood, and Mom started selling her baked goods at the local farmer's market. It was a tough few months, but we made it through stronger than ever. As I entered my teenage years, things started to change. I began to crave independence, pushing against the boundaries my parents had set. We had our fair share of arguments, over curfews, grades, and my choice of friends. But even in the heat of those moments, I never doubted their love for me. They were always there, a steady presence in my life, guiding me even when I thought I didn't need it. High school brought new challenges and experiences. I joined the debate team, discovering a passion for public speaking that surprised even me. Dad would help me practice my arguments, playing devil's advocate and pushing me to consider different perspectives. Mom was always in the audience during competitions, her proud smile visible even from the stage. It was during one of these debates that I first realized I wanted to become a lawyer, to use my voice to make a difference in the world. Our house became a hub for my friends, a safe space where we could hang out, study, and just be ourselves. Mom would keep us well fed with her famous chocolate chip cookies, while Dad would regale us with embarrassing stories from his youth. Those evenings, filled with laughter and the warmth of friendship, are some of my fondest memories. As graduation approached, the future loomed large on the horizon. I spent countless nights poring over college brochures, weighing my options, and dreaming of what lay ahead. My parents were supportive, encouraging me to aim high but also reminding me to stay true to myself. When the acceptance letter from my dream school arrived, we celebrated with a special dinner and a cake that Mom had decorated with the university's colors. The summer before college was bittersweet. I was excited about the adventures that awaited me, but the thought of leaving home tugged at my heart. We took one last family vacation, a road trip across the country, visiting national parks and quirky roadside attractions. It was during those long drives, with the landscape rushing by outside the window, that I truly appreciated the bond we shared as a family. Moving day came all too soon. As we packed up the car with boxes of my belongings, I could see the mix of pride and sadness in my parents' eyes. The drive to campus was filled with a comfortable silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. When we finally arrived and started unpacking, it hit me that this was really happening. I was starting a new chapter of my life. Saying goodbye was harder than I'd imagined. As I hugged my parents one last time before they drove away, I felt a lump in my throat, but I also felt ready, knowing that the foundation they had given me would carry me through whatever challenges lay ahead. Those first few weeks of college were a whirlwind of new experiences. I met people from all walks of life, attended lectures that opened my mind to new ideas, and slowly began to find my place in this new world. Late-night study sessions in the library, heated discussions in the dorm common room, and the thrill of tackling challenging coursework. It was everything I had hoped for and more. But amidst all the excitement, there was an undercurrent of homesickness that I couldn't quite shake. I missed the comfort of our old house, the smell of Mom's cooking, and the sound of Dad's laughter. Our weekly phone calls became a lifeline, a reminder of the love and support that was always there, even if it was now hundreds of miles away. As the semester progressed, I threw myself into my studies, determined to make my parents proud. I joined the Pre-Law Society, volunteered at a local legal aid clinic, and even started a study group for my fellow aspiring lawyers. The workload was intense, but I thrived on the challenge, feeling more certain than ever that this was the path I wanted to pursue. It was during my sophomore year that things began to change. The calls from home became less frequent, and when we did talk, there was a tension in my parents' voices that I couldn't quite place. They assured me everything was fine, but I could sense that something was off. I tried to push my worries aside, focusing instead on my upcoming internship at a prestigious law firm. The internship was everything I had hoped for: challenging, inspiring, and eye-opening. I worked long hours, soaking up every bit of knowledge I could. My supervisors were impressed with my work ethic and passion for the law. For the first time, I could see my future clearly, arguing cases in court, fighting for justice, making a real difference in people's lives. But as the summer drew to a close, that nagging feeling of unease returned. My parents' calls had become even more infrequent, and when I did reach them, their responses were vague and distracted. I tried to convince myself that they were just busy, that everything would be back to normal when I returned home for Thanksgiving break. How wrong I was. When I finally made it home, the house felt different. The warmth and laughter that had once filled every room were gone, replaced by a heavy silence. Mom and Dad sat me down in the living room, their faces grave. The words that followed shattered my world. They were getting a divorce. I listened in stunned silence as they explained that they had grown apart over the years, that they had tried to make it work but couldn't. They assured me that it wasn't my fault, that they both still loved me more than anything. But all I could think about was how I hadn't seen this coming. How I had been so caught up in my own life that I had missed the signs of my family falling apart. The days that followed were a blur. I wandered through the house, remembering all the happy moments we had shared within these walls. Every room held a memory: family game nights in the living room, lazy Sunday breakfasts in the kitchen, movie marathons in the den. It felt like I was saying goodbye not just to my childhood home, but to my entire past. As I packed up my belongings, deciding what to take and what to leave behind, I couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. The future I had always imagined, coming home for holidays, bringing my own children to visit their grandparents in this house, was suddenly gone. In its place was an uncertain landscape that I didn't know how to navigate. Returning to college after Thanksgiving break was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I threw myself into my studies with renewed vigor, using the work as a distraction from the pain and confusion I felt. My friends noticed the change in me, but I couldn't bring myself to talk about what had happened. How could I explain that my whole world had been turned upside down? As the weeks passed, I slowly began to adjust to this new reality. Mom moved into an apartment in the city, while Dad stayed in the house. I split my holidays between them, trying to maintain some semblance of family unity. It was awkward and painful at first, but gradually, we found a new rhythm. Through it all, my passion for law remained a constant. If anything, the experience of my parents' divorce made me even more determined to succeed. I saw firsthand how complex and emotional legal proceedings could be, and I wanted to be there for others going through similar situations. As I approached graduation, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point. The path hadn't been easy, and it certainly wasn't what I had expected when I first left home for college. But I had survived, and in many ways, I had grown stronger for it. Standing on the stage, receiving my diploma, I searched the audience for my parents. They were seated separately, but both wore expressions of pride and love. In that moment, I realized that while our family might look different now, the love that had always been at its core remained unchanged. As I prepared to start law school in the fall, I can't help but think about how much has changed since those carefree days in our big old house. The world isn't as simple as I once thought it was, and happiness isn't always permanent. But I've learned that love can endure even when circumstances change, and that strength often comes from facing our greatest challenges. My name is Tasha, and this is the story of how my world turned upside down. But it's also the story of how I found the resilience to keep moving forward, to chase my dreams, and to redefine what family means to me. The future may be uncertain, but I face it with hope, determination, and the knowledge that no matter what happens, I carry the love and lessons of my past with me always.